Is it over? Is it finally over? Penn State and Matt Campbell are working on finalizing a deal to make him the Nittany Lions' next head coach.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. We got so much to cover here, actually. The alleged, right, I got to say alleged leaked audio of a Penn State players meeting that was led by Pat Kraft. We're going to get to that later on, honestly, but I'm focused on Penn State and Matt Campbell finalizing a deal here. What this means, because we talked about, hey, Penn State's strongly pursuing him on 3 and 24/7. Don't put out the report unless there isn't something substantial here. Then, of course, late night message board drama, social media drama saying he's staying. He's going to stay in Ames, Iowa. It looks like Penn State's going to get this over the finish line. I still need to see pen to paper, but this is probably the closest that it's been, even with the Kalani Sitake situation. So let me know your thoughts in the live chat. We're going to try to get both. I got an agenda to get through, and I also want to get your comments from the live chat as well, because Matt Campbell to Penn State, under the circumstances, is an A+ hire after all of this. A coaching search that ultimately became a national embarrassment. You have this leaked audio of a Penn State players meeting that is allegedly Pat Kraft saying different things, and I'll get to that in a moment. What all of that meant. It just hasn't been smooth sailing. And then you settle in on Matt Campbell, a guy that has been successful at one of the worst Power 4 jobs in all of college football, in Iowa State. Objectively speaking, that job is extremely difficult to succeed at, especially in this era of transfer portal, NIL, and Matt Campbell was winning Big 12 championships. He kept them not just floating, but hey, they're in the mix every single year for the most part. He was doing it with recruiting classes that weren't that great. Matt Campbell is an X's and O's guy. He's a no-nonsense guy. I think that's going to be very refreshing, especially for a lot of Penn State fans that just didn't agree with the antics of James Franklin. You know, Franklin has a personality to him. And I'm not gonna dwell on James Franklin and what he did and what he said and everything, but Matt Campbell is essentially the opposite of the way that James Franklin operates. And it might be what's best for Penn State going forward. Blue collar, no nonsense, tough football, X's and O's guy. The recruiting, is that a product of the environment at Iowa State? Because it's tough. You think it's tough to get players to stay college. And even Pat Kraft allegedly said this, right? So that's well, like I said, we'll get to that later. But Pat Kraft did admit, allegedly in a recording, that State College, it is tough to get players to get to Pennsylvania, to State College, Pennsylvania. Well, how tough do you think it is to get players to Ames, Iowa? So Matt Campbell, with the right resources, the war chest, everything else, the idea is that he's going to be able to elevate Penn State. You're going to be able to bring over the Iowa State roster. The Iowa State roster is capable right now. I like this group. In theory, if you can get a lot of the players, this is a veteran group that includes a quarterback, because we know, based on what players were saying on social media, that the Penn State roster, there's not going to be many, if any, holdovers going into next season. And if that's the case, then Penn State's going to become Iowa State for this past season. Well, Iowa State went 8-4, and they weren't that good, and you shouldn't be that happy with Iowa State's roster. Iowa State was one of the predicted favorites to win a Big 12 title this season. And a majority of this group are players that are going into their third or fourth year of eligibility, they transfer over. Penn State gets instantly a veteran starting group. And then you could potentially upgrade some spots. And I'm not saying that Matt Campbell's going to get everybody, because there are Iowa natives. There are people that are going to want to stay at Iowa State, right? To each their own. There might be some players that stay at Penn State because it's Penn State. There's going to be players that stay at Iowa State because it's Iowa State. But with what Penn State is most likely going to be losing, you need a quarterback. Well, in theory, Iowa State's going to be able to bring that over with Rocco Becht. Rocco Becht was one of the presumed top quarterbacks going into the season, and probably will be next year in terms of projections. He's got to live up to that. I don't think he had the greatest season, but he is a good starter that if you can get some more talent around him with Penn State's resources, maybe he elevates more. A running back, potentially 2 running backs, a quarterback of the future. This is where the wide receiver core. So Becht was pretty keen on distributing the football around. It was a pretty even distribution among wide receivers, tight ends, everything else. So that's a core that, okay, is Penn State going to bring everybody over, or are they going to get some players outside of the transfer, outside of Iowa State and Penn State that are in the transfer portal that can come in and make an immediate impact? So the idea is that you can marry Matt Campbell and Penn State and build this together. I mean, a lot of people that are close to Penn State that appreciate the university, whether that's Letterman or anything else, are excited about the future for Penn State, and you should be. Now, let me address briefly why did Iowa State disappoint, so to speak, this season? 8-4, that's not going to be too appealing to some Penn State fans that maybe don't know the ins and outs of Iowa State from this season. Iowa State was expected to contend, if not be the favorite for the Big 12 title this season. And they disappointed because they fell below expectations, but they still 8-4. They rallied. They lost not one, but 2 elite cornerbacks at the same time to start the month of October when they were going into the toughest part of their schedule. And that's when they lost 4 games in a row. Then they resettled and they ended up winning out. Iowa State, if there's credit anywhere, if there's something that Penn State fans should be eager for, it's that Iowa State defensively, again, tough, hard-nosed, gritty football there. And on the defensive side, the cornerbacks, the secondary, especially when you get pass-happy Oregon or pass-happy USC, you're going to need a strong secondary. If you can get those guys to come over, Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper are guys that I'm specifically referring to. Those are players that were strong contributors, were arguably a couple of the best players on Iowa State's team. Those are the players that you're going to want to target in addition to the other guys that I've said so far from Iowa State's roster. But a group that you're going to get mostly redshirt sophomores, third, fourth, fifth year players. You're going to get a lot of veterans from this Iowa State team, and it's going to mimic a culture that Penn State fans are very much going to like, with the physicality and everything else. So right now, it's in the final stages. You got to get it across the finish line. On3 had a video out that says Penn State hires Matt Campbell. So it seems like in this instance, they have officially declared it. But until there's pen to paper, I'm going to reserve 1%. I'm going to reserve 1% of myself to say that I got to wait to see this actually go through the hoop before it's a celebration process. But for Penn State, we're going to get into more of what this means given the circumstances, again, because this coaching search did not go well. And now it did all of a sudden. So we got plenty to talk about here on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. And we're going to talk to you in the live chat as well. Coming up next here after the break. And this episode is brought to you by Aura Frames. You're looking for a gift for the holidays, because the holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is just the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap, it's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure it out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. grandparents, parents, newlyweds, friends and family, anybody who loves photos, endless uploads of pictures and 30-second videos are able to go through the Aura app. So again, simple setup. You can add personalized messages right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment it's open. And packaging, it comes gift ready. No price tag, no wrapping needed, which is a huge win. Makes it even easier. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That is auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames, they do sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Again, that's Aura Frames. Terms and conditions apply. Thank you for joining me on a Friday afternoon. Really greatly appreciated as we get this bit of breaking news. We're also going to talk about the other breaking news of the alleged leaked audio of Pat Kraft during a players meeting and just what it offers in terms of clarity around the Penn State situation. Because now it makes even more sense to me why James Franklin was fired and why there was such a hesitation to go with Terry Smith as the head coach. Even though I do think Terry Smith was a good candidate, Matt Campbell obviously has a more proven track record, and nobody should be disappointed with Penn State hiring Matt Campbell. Let me make that clear. But if you were like me and said, hey, I can see the vision with Terry Smith. He made the adjustments. He's a Penn State alum. Penn State legacy, all that. I can see why there was hesitation from the higher ups. But I promise to talk to you all in the live chat. And especially if you were here for some of the recent live shows, I haven't been getting to the live chat. And it pains me because I do want to talk to all of you. Okay, so right out of the gate, too bad the recruiting class is cooked. Not necessarily. Iowa State commits have signed their letter of intent, but what you can do when the transfer portal opens, so I want to be transparent. I am 95% sure of this, that this can and should happen. Now, Iowa State's recruiting class isn't great. It's not. I think it's just outside or just inside the top 50, depending on where you look. So it's not, compared to what James Franklin has done at Virginia Tech, it's not great. It's half of that because he had that in the top 25. But we're talking about depth here. Okay. You still need depth. You still need players that Matt Campbell wants a part of his program. So for Penn State, they could potentially get some of these Iowa State commits from the class of 2026 to transfer immediately as true freshmen. Julian Sayin actually did this when he transferred from Alabama up to Ohio State. Starting quarterback for the Buckeyes, if you don't know, former 5-star, if you're confused about that or haven't followed college football much this season. So the Penn State's not in a situation where recruiting is doomed. I've said that I'm okay with punting on the class of 2026 because how you fix that, you just be more active in the transfer portal. You don't need to do anything fancy, or you don't need to, and honestly, for what Penn State needs right now going into next season, the class of 2026, as nice as it would have been to have a solid, stellar class and to keep a lot of prospects, again, Peyton Falzone and Jackson Ford are still in there, and you can potentially get some Iowa State commits. But I'm looking to get some more veteran talent. Redshirt sophomores, second, third, fourth-year players, guys that would contribute right away, as opposed to true freshmen that are probably going to take some time to develop. If I'm Matt Campbell and I want to hit the ground running at Penn State, I want to attack the transfer portal and get as many veteran players that help my roster and help improve my roster. Again, particularly at wide receiver. Wide receiver has been an issue for Penn State, so that's probably why I'm looking at that position group and I'm saying, get some weapons around Rocco Becht. And nothing is official, so that's speculation on my part to say that, oh, Rocco Becht, you are a Penn State Nittany Lion, right? Could it be Ethan Grunkemeyer at the end of the day? Penn State, I've seen people float the idea that Bo Pribula could come back to Penn State. I imagine that Becht is going to stay with his coach. Quarterback Rocco Becht's going to stay with his coach. But the 2026 recruiting class, when maybe one or two of those players would have contributed this season in a limited capacity, I'm okay with punting on the class of 2026 because you have the transfer portal. Okay. So On3 is calling it now. I do have social media open to make sure that it is. Is it officially official? Is it not? So it's still being finalized as of right now. It's still being finalized, which again, it is a great sign for Penn State. Different with the Satake situation because it was going off of there was a follow-up report. It's different from Satake because initially the report was Penn State has narrowed its search to Satake. They've zeroed in on Kalani Satake as their favorite. But this time it was Penn State has zeroed in on Matt Campbell, and now they're finalizing a deal. So there's that second step of it. They never On3, 24/7, CBS, anybody, ESPN, nobody reported officially that there was a finalizing of a deal between Penn State and Satake. So that's the missing part of this. Let me point out this about Matt Campbell, and I should have probably led off with this. Campbell turned down a lot of jobs in his time. He's been at Iowa State for 10 years. He's not taking the Penn State job lightly. He's not taking this job if he doesn't think. And same thing with Satake. Even though Satake doesn't end up at Penn State and stays with BYU, and it gets to this point where it is a national embarrassment to an extent, right? It's just egg on your face if you're Penn State, right? It's not a good look. And then Pat Kraft gets called into question. Great rebound. I'll say that. But in the scheme of things, Penn State targeted two candidates that have been so reluctant to leave their respective institutions. What does that tell you about the Penn State job? People are trying to clown the Penn State job, to dunk on the university, saying nobody wants the job. But then two candidates that emerged were probably the two most reluctant candidates. Matt Campbell never even left for the NFL. It is reported. It's on the record. This isn't hearsay. This isn't message board rumors. He turned down an 8-year deal that would have paid him a ton of money from the Detroit Lions back in the day. This was around 2021. He turned down an NFL job, and he's going to accept the Penn State job? What does that say? What does that tell you? It tells you that Matt Campbell believes this is a legitimate opportunity. It tells you that Penn State is going to give him everything he needs to succeed, that both sides want one another. Matt Campbell is not doing this lightly. He's not looking, oh, this is my way to get out of Iowa State. He's been there for 10 years, and he passed up the NFL. He passed up the Detroit Lions. Tells me everything I need to know about this situation. Great on Pat Kraft and the Penn State administration. The president, Neely Bendapudi, was apparently more involved in this. There were different reports saying that she was involved in this part of the search more so now. They got this across the finish line, even though they were starting to, Iowa State insiders were reporting, saying that, hey, Matt Campbell's trending towards staying in Ames, Iowa. This is a great situation. At least it's trending back in the favor for the Cyclones. And they still got this done. So no, not another situation where this was Kalani Satake 2.0. No, Penn State made sure, again, I still have 1% reserved because I want to see pen to paper, but we're truly in the final stages of this happening. And like I said, On3 basically inferring that it's happening. Everybody else is talking about it like it's happening. Iowa State fans absolutely should be concerned. I see that here. It's like Iowa State fans are concerned. Absolutely, because they were talking about building a statue for him and everything else. This is the kind of coach that Penn State is getting. It is a great recovery under all of the circumstances, especially with what we saw or what we heard. I shouldn't say what we saw, what we heard transpire today. In case you missed it, there was a leaked audio file of allegedly Pat Kraft at a Penn State players meeting, just talking about different things, very critical of certain programs, mostly in the Big Ten, critical of James Franklin, critical of the way that the program was being run. And I got to say, after listening to that audio file, I have a much different perception of Pat Kraft, and you should too, for good reasons, actually. We're going to discuss that next year, coming up on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. You have live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly, player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. And there are lines available for your favorite NFL teams. The Eagles play the Chargers this weekend. Lines are available for that game, and the Steelers are underdogs against the Ravens. If you like those lines, you can check them out over at FanDuel.com and the FanDuel app. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. With FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, final segment on the agenda. There are still some other things that we can definitely talk about, and I'm going to have follow-up episodes. This is not the last conversation here. What does the coaching staff look like for Penn State moving forward? Because I've already heard tons of rumors about which assistants are going to follow James Franklin to Virginia Tech. And while it's not ideal, so be it at this point. If you don't want to be at Penn State for the sake of being at Penn State, then I don't know what to say. So if that's Terry Smith, and I think Terry Smith should be a head coach somewhere, and I have more thoughts on this given, again, what we have with this audio file that most of us heard, and I can't get through every bullet point on it. But does Jim Knowles stay? Does Dan Connor, Deion Barnes, Ty Howell? Those are the assistants that I'm really keying in on. Andy Kotelnicki, Anthony Poindexter, Danny O'Brien, Marcus Higgins, all probably leaving and going somewhere else in some capacity. Maybe they're all going to Virginia Tech. Maybe they're all going to Virginia Tech. They're under official contracts with Penn State University. So that's why we haven't seen as much movement, so to speak, because I'm thinking, well, if they're all going to Virginia Tech, allegedly, supposedly, why not just go? Are they waiting for a different head coach? But I would like to see Dan Connor on staff. I'd like to see Deion Barnes on staff. I'd like to see, Anthony Poindexter is a really good coach, even Terry Smith. But after everything that's transpired here, and with this leaked audio recording, allegedly of Pat Kraft, again, let me preface that in this entire conversation until somebody admits otherwise, right? So you have to go off of that for the sake of me having this conversation with you. There was an audio recording that was leaked of who we presume is Pat Kraft and various different players, probably veterans for next year's team. And it seems like this came after somewhere in the middle of Indiana and Nebraska. That's probably where this happened because to my knowledge or to my memory of listening to the recording and the explanation of it, it's about a 30-minute video of Chris Drew, who released the audio or talked about it on his YouTube channel. I want to give credit where credit's due for the audio recording. And he tried to break it down, and Pat Kraft was really hard on Oregon. He talked about Michigan cheating. Ohio State is the mecca of college football right now, and they have everything going for them. But talked about what you need to take away from this. My main takeaway is that there was just so much division. There was so much confusion between all the levels of Penn State football. At the top, the administration, the coaches, the players themselves, and anybody else involved. Nobody was on the same page with this Penn State football program. And there was a lot of misunderstanding. You could hear it. Football players were questioning, why isn't Kobe Howard starting? Why isn't he playing? You mean to tell me that Kobe Howard was riding the bench because of his lackluster blocking on special teams? No, it didn't make sense to any of us. We couldn't figure it out. And neither could the players. And they were talking about Terry Smith and everything else. It just shows the state of the Penn State football program that, whether you agree with it or not, needs a reset, needs to go into somewhat, I'm not talking about a complete 180. They don't need to flip everything around, but you need to figure out where you want to go moving forward. And that's why I understand the hesitation to promote Terry Smith, because we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. And now we know how clear it was that there was just a lot of misunderstanding, to put it lightly, among Pat Kraft, James Franklin, the assistant coaches, the players, and it's no wonder this team fell apart. You couldn't make any sense of why isn't a guy like Kobe Howard playing? Why aren't we making the necessary changes when it is clear as day that, because there was an agenda, it seems like, that James Franklin had to play. This is my understanding of it. I'm not even trying to be critical. I'm just trying to make sense of it. That James Franklin was playing favorites, that NIL didn't become a form of player compensation. It became more of trying to benefit your favorite players on the roster. At least that's what it seemed like. So listen to the audio recording for yourself. There's a lot of words that obviously I can't say on this show. What I do have is a different appreciation for Pat Kraft, because I see somebody that has a vision for the Penn State football program. Oh, but he said some bad words and it's not professional. It's a private players meeting. So you have to understand that Pat Kraft is communicating directly with the team. This wasn't a meeting where he stood up in front of the public at the podium. I'm not excusing maybe necessarily the vulgarity, but I don't care. Because that's supposed to be one-on-one with the team. You're having a heart-to-heart conversation with players that could be on your team next year or couldn't be. And you don't know what's going to happen. So you're being honest. You're being critical. You're being real. And what is real and what shouldn't be real is the fact that somebody felt the need to leak this audio recording. That's a felony in the state of Pennsylvania. You want to talk about how serious this is? You can't record somebody without their consent. Audio. You can't record somebody on audio without their consent in the state of Pennsylvania. And then to leak it to somebody in the journalism hemisphere. There are serious consequences about that. And I'm not even sure with Matt Campbell and Penn State trying to finalize a deal, I'm not even sure if this has made it to Pat Kraft's desk yet. But it is serious. It will make it to his desk. And it's bad. Like, it is bad because it involves legality. You could face a felony charges if Penn State and Pat Kraft are going to press charges. They could. What it is, it's not a reflection of Terry Smith, because I think Terry Smith is still a great guy, a great coach. But it is, here's where my hesitation, I see the hesitation with Penn State in promoting somebody like Terry Smith, is because Terry Smith, even though I believe he's a Penn State guy and his motivations are for the university and trying to pay respect to Joe Paterno, who coached him once upon a time, you're still connected to James Franklin and what this program divulged into, where it did become more about me, myself, and I than it did about we are. And Terry Smith is still linked to that in some capacity, even though he did play for Penn State in the 90s. He was an alum. He would do anything for this university, but you're still part of the James Franklin era. And I hate that for Terry Smith, but I understand if you're having this audio file. I have reason to believe that this audio recording was leaked because it was supposed to, in theory, make Pat Kraft look bad and make Terry Smith look good and try to promote him. That if we can get Pat, I don't know what the agenda is, and I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but clearly there was a motivation to have this audio recording go public. It was to try to get the public to shame Pat Kraft. And in a way, because the players all wanted Terry Smith. 90% of them, according to Tony Rojas. And he went on the record and said, the roster is only going to stay together if Terry Smith's our head coach. We're not going to play for anybody else. That's what he was inferring. That can't happen. That is why Penn State's going in this direction, because they do need a true reset. You're having it now where there are so many different, I don't know who used the word. It might have been, I'll give credit. I want to try to give credit where credit's due. Tyler Donahue of 24/7, who covers Penn State for 24/7, tribalism. And yeah, you're seeing that where it's different divisions of the Penn State football program that are for the university or for James Franklin or for Terry Smith. Do you get what I'm saying? You can't have that. It's the Penn State football program. It's not about one person or one coach or one coaching staff. It's about Penn State University football. And somehow it divulged in a way where it became nothing about that. So now we know what we know. And this is why Penn State is going outside of the university to make the hire. I really don't expect a lot of players and coaches to be back. And at the end of the day, for where Penn State wants to go, and you have somebody that's, I said this in the past live show, Matt Campbell has the opportunity to unite all the different factions, all the different sections of the Penn State apparatus, the donors, the administration, the alumni, the lettermen, current players, any coaches that want to stay on board. You have a chance to finally unify everybody, because this division isn't just only within the football team. No, it extends beyond Penn State University, or it extends throughout Penn State University, because beyond it means it's outside. No, it's within Penn State University, but there is just constant collateral damage and infighting. And Matt Campbell, I think, is the right coach to actually stabilize that, to settle it down, and to bridge all those different gaps. To be determined. But I think he's the right guy to do it. And then to clarify my thoughts on Pat Kraft, it shows that he has a vision for the program. He wants to win. He knows how to win. And that was part of the power struggle, is Pat Kraft saw Penn State as being closer to Ohio State, which they can be if you follow the blueprint. Pat Kraft has the blueprint. James Franklin wanted to do it differently. And that is why Penn State could only get so close. The results speak for themselves. They could never go from great to elite. They were always stuck in good to great. Pat Kraft's trying to get them to be elite. So my thoughts there on the alleged leaked audio recording of Pat Kraft, right? See if I can jump. There's so many comments that I would very much like to get to. I can try to get to a few of them while I still have all of you, but thank you for checking out this episode, right? I really appreciate each and every one of you. Fans should be extremely excited about the Matt Campbell hiring. I think Bob Chesney would have been a similar, I see Bob Chesney mentioned in here, similar caliber coach of what he would have been able to do to stabilize the program. But Matt Campbell has the proof. Bob Chesney does not. Oh, but he's won at D2, James Madison. Okay. Matt Campbell has managed a Power 4 program for a decade. So Oregon, thank you for Oregon checking in. The comments, we're probably not going to like each other at all anymore, based on some of the comments that were allegedly said today, right? Good pickup for the Nittany Lions. Good luck to Oregon in the playoffs. I know that the next time Penn State and Oregon plays each other, there's going to be a lot of bad blood, to say the least. Like you, I want some pens to paper. Absolutely. Just until it's done. I want to go on social media because I know some of these comments are a little older here. Still nothing officially official, but everybody's talking about it like it's official. So this is a much better feeling because I didn't even buy into the Satake news. I said, I got to see it to believe it. I don't even think this is going to happen. It doesn't feel real. And it fell apart. This feels real when you have every sports talk show talking about Penn State hiring Matt Campbell. Yes, it did turn into a disaster, and best of luck to Terry Smith. You're a great man and an even better coach. Maybe he sticks around, maybe not. I doubt it at this point. I doubt it, if you want my 2 cents on that. This is a nuanced take, and I've said that too. Penn State lucked out. They got very lucky in this situation. A lot of no's, a big public no from BYU and Satake. After Kraft botched this, he gets a guy that should have been at the forefront of the candidates from the beginning. Agreed. Very much agreed. Am I the only one who liked what Pat Kraft said in that leaked audio? The substance of it, right? I'm not going to get into the specifics of it because we know what was said. But a guy that is willing to fight tooth and nail to elevate Penn State. I like the attitude that he had. We can be better. Why are we acting like this? Why are we acting like we're a mid-tier program? We can be elite. Penn State's got the money. Penn State's got the resources. A lot of comments. Really appreciate everyone's feedback. What year did Campbell win a Big 12 championship? I thought it was just last season. Let's see here. Yeah, 2024. Tied for first. Okay. So maybe I have that incorrect. He won the regular season title. He did not win the championship game itself. So he won a regular season title. He's tied for a regular season title just last year, and then lost to Arizona State in the title game itself, but then followed it up with a win against Miami of Florida in the Pop-Tarts Bowl at Camping World Stadium. See, okay, so he's won a Pop-Tarts Bowl. He's won a Pop-Tarts Bowl. That's a big deal. We will probably get most of Iowa State's eligible roster, absolutely, and there's some good veteran players that are going to have to adjust to physical Big Ten football. I like it as a starting point. I like it as a foundation, especially when Penn State's schedule is extremely favorable. He beat Iowa with 50 ranked recruits, and Penn State lost with top 10 group. Good point. Good point. I think Matt Campbell, if I'm not mistaken, I might be, but he's 3-1 in the past 4 meetings of the Cy-Hawk rivalry. Awesome. That's good, because I know that overall he has a losing record against Iowa, but recently he's 3-1. Also, I pointed this out I didn't want to just recycle all of my material from the first show that I did when this broke yesterday, that Penn State identified Campbell as their top candidate. Recruiting is going to be, even though questionable top 50 classes at Iowa State aren't going to get it done at Penn State. We know this, but I like his footprint a ton. I think he'll settle in just nicely at Penn State, because he has to establish himself. Okay. But he's born and raised in Ohio. Okay. All right. Well, Penn State has done well enough recruiting in Ohio. He might be able to improve that. He's got Midwest ties, which aren't too far. It was different with Satake, who only knew the state of Utah. He only knew the West Coast. So this is going to be different, because he has no East Coast connections, nothing to the Northeast, nothing in the Northeast, nothing in the Mid-Atlantic. Matt Campbell has at least some. An Ohio native. He went to Pittsburgh for a season, but then transferred to Mount Union, which is a college back in Ohio. I also like this. Run game. Again, it just goes back into the physical mentality. He's been an offensive line coach. He is a run first, physical, ball control type of guy, which I think is on brand for Penn State. Very much on brand for Penn State. And James Franklin started to do that towards the end of his tenure too. I do appreciate those offenses to an extent, right? But even still, it wasn't all of what it could have been. But that was because they neglected to make the changes when they were so obvious. We all saw it. But anticipate a run first offense. And I wonder I wonder what Matt Campbell is going to do with his coaching staff. Is he going to bring over a longtime defensive coordinator, assistant coach John Heacock with him to Penn State? Or is he going to stick with Jim Knowles? I think that was a big negotiation point. Penn State has both Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles under contract. That's to be determined. I'm eager to see how that shakes out. Does Matt Campbell go with one of them? Does he go with both of them? I don't think Kotelnicki is a terrible coordinator. I don't think Jim Knowles is a terrible coordinator. I think it's a product of the system this year. I really do believe that, because notice how Andy Kotelnicki's offenses started to get much better when Terry Smith said, enough of the gimmicks. Don't do that. Don't run those. Bad idea. Let's get the downfield passing attack. Andy Kotelnicki settled in as a play caller. 37 points against Nebraska, 40 points against Rutgers. I know that's not the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. Those defenses aren't great. I get it. But they weren't able to move the football like that against Nevada, FIU, Villanova. We'll see what Matt Campbell wants to do. I'm just saying it's on the table that Andy Kotelnicki, if he wants to stay at Penn State, I doubt it, but did he work that out in some capacity? Jim Knowles, highest paid defensive coordinator in all of college football. Do you keep him, or do you bring over a longtime assistant? If I had to make a guess, again, this is a guess, this is a prediction, he's probably going to go with his longtime assistant in John Heacock. He'll probably bring him over. What does Jim Knowles do? Does he go to Virginia Tech? Maybe. I don't know. I wonder how Jim Knowles feels about, same thing with Andy Kotelnicki. I wonder how they feel about James Franklin, given that their reputation kind of took a hit this season. Because everybody thought, Andy Kotelnicki was in line to be the West Virginia head coach, or at least get strong consideration. And then everybody was calling for your job. And I even said it myself. I don't know if Andy Kotelnicki should be calling plays anymore. But then Terry Smith settled him down. And it got better. Same thing with the Jim Knowles defense. They simplified it and it got better. But it's to a point where I totally understand if Matt Campbell wants to come in with a fresh slate and start completely over. Yep. So glad this nightmare is over. It's getting there. A+ higher. Yeah. 8-4 ain't too bad, but they underperform every year. Matt Campbell does more with less. Again, the idea is that you give him the war chest at Penn State. He'll be able to elevate. Penn State's going to help elevate him. He didn't take the Detroit Lions job. If you have any question marks about Matt Campbell, he was interested. There was NFL interest in him. So that kind of tells me the caliber of coach that he is. Why he never left Iowa State, according to somebody like Josh Pate, who covers college football, most people who follow me probably know that show as well. If you don't, it's a college football show. And he talked about how Matt Campbell was always going to leave for the right opportunity. He's turning down NFL jobs, but he's going to accept the Penn State job, especially after all the mutiny here. What does that say? What does that tell you? He was winning with not so good rosters in Ames, Iowa. Iowa State is not a glamorous job. It is not. It is an uphill battle all the way through. Penn State, I still believe now it's definitely taken some hits in terms of the brand, but you want to talk about somebody that can stabilize everything? Matt Campbell can be that guy. Trying to make sure everything is that Matt Campbell is expected to go with Penn State. Expected to, again, I want to see pen to paper. And then how does he build this coaching staff? So we're going to monitor all of that, okay? So I got to wrap up here. We've been going for almost 45 minutes. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I enjoy doing these live shows so much. I wish I could get to everybody in the comments. I really wish I could. But that is where I'm going to wrap things up. The next conversations are going to be reacting when this finally goes through, when there is an actual agreement, there's pen to paper, and then the board approves it, talking about which players could come over in the transfer portal and what this roster would look like. What players would you want to keep from Penn State? Getting Matt Campbell now, as soon as possible, is great because he can start bridging some of the relationships. I don't think that every single Penn State player is ready to follow James Franklin to Virginia Tech. You might be able to get some holdovers that are quality players, and they will be able to help. But this team is mostly going to be comprised of Iowa State players. And the nice thing about having Penn State behind you, if you're Matt Campbell, is you can now go get players and prospects, if they're in the portal, that you once had a previous relationship with, but I don't know, Iowa State, Ames, Iowa, I don't know that I want to go there. Okay, now can bring them over to Penn State if they're in the portal, right? Everything has to line up there. But that's the idea now, is that Matt Campbell has the leverage to get some of those players that maybe he couldn't have at Iowa State to go to Penn State. It's still Penn State. It's still Big Ten football. Penn State's going to be an attractive place to play that sport. Trust me. All right, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. As always, we do this daily here. We'll talk about the breaking news. We'll react to it all. We do a show daily here. So if you're new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts, so you don't miss a thing when it comes to Penn State sports, Penn State football, Penn State wrestling, all your favorite Penn State sports teams. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the #1 sports podcasting network out there. Thank you so much for joining me on a live edition of Locked On Nittany Lions.